What is the Muslim Brotherhood? So the Muslim Brotherhood is a real organization. They are considered a terrorist organization in Saudi Arabia and Egypt. A lot of the Middle East doesn't like them. They were founded by a man named Hassan al-Banna. So Hassan al-Banna is the leader of the Muslim Brotherhood. He founded them in 1928. And the Muslim Brotherhood, by their own dictates, is an organization, and Hassan al-Banna believes that it is the role of Islam to dominate the world and subjugate other religions. So part of the Muslim Brotherhood is the world domination and the institution of Sharia law. That is what Hassan al-Banna's philosophy is. So when someone says we praise the philosophy of Hassan al-Banna, what they mean is we want Islam to dominate the world. Okay, this is standard court. You know, this reasoning has been used in court. Another thing, when I refer to the Holy Land Foundation trial, that is the major landmark case in the funding of terrorism. It was in 2008. It proved that certain organizations were funneling money to Hamas, and certain people were complicit in that. So I'll say who was indicted in the Holy Land Foundation trial at times. I'll list unindicted co-conspirators in the Holy Land Foundation trial. All of that should be noted first out. Now, the story of the Muslim Brotherhood in Canada will start with a man named Jamal Badawi, who we have to explain. Let's get the picture here. Jamal Badawi, Dawa pioneer and renowned scholar, very renowned. He held positions at Dalhousie University, and he was seen as like a mainstream figure in Canada by idiots. So, Mr. Badawi is listed by name as one of the leaders of the Muslim Brotherhood in their 1991 memorandum. He is listed as part of their Shura Council in North America. That is their leaders. He's listed as one of their leaders and on their Shura Council as of 1991. And this document is part of the public documents from the 2008 Holy Land Foundation trial, so they are court record. There's also a 1992 phone book from the Muslim Brotherhood, which has Jamal Badawi's name and number in it. So he is a member. He has also openly praised Hassan al-Banna. He's also quoted some other radical imams. So, from 2001 to 2013, he was the director of CARE Canada. So CARE Can. So he was the, we don't need the picture of him anymore. He was the sort of director. He was the driving force, the creation of CARE Can. Now, CARE, many people know that CARE America was another unindicted co-conspirator in the Holy Land Foundation trial. Now, CARE Canada and CARE America will try and make the claim that they are not related, that they are different entities. Now, a lot of actually all Islamic extremist organizations do this. Like, CARE is actually an umbrella corporation. There's like CARE Dallas, CARE Montreal, CARE Houston, CARE like New York, CARE Los Angeles, and they're all sort of registered as separate entities. That way, if someone in CARE Los Angeles says, you know what, we should just Sharia law kill the Jews, every other CARE could be like, oh no, that's not us, that's a completely separate organization. Now, CARE Canada's home office, according to their own internal documents, is listed in Washington, D.C. So they are themselves a subsidiary of CARE. Now, in 2013, they changed their name from CARE to the NCCM, National Council of Canadian Muslims. Okay? However, they did put out a statement saying, hey, it's just a name change, we're still the same organization. Around 2013 is when people started to do reports on Jamal Badawi's, around 2012, when Jamal Badawi's name actually as an extreme Islamist kind of made it to the news, so they shifted away from him. So let's learn a bit more about Jamal Badawi, because he comes up a lot more. So he's identified in that 1991 Muslim Brotherhood document. Now, in that document, here's what it says in the document, which lists Jamal Badawi as one of their leaders. The Ikhwan, the Brotherhood, or Muslim Brotherhood, must understand that their work in America is a kind of grand jihad in eliminating and destroying the Western civilization from within and sabotaging its miserable house by their hands and the hands of believers, so that it is eliminated and God's religion is made victorious over all other religions. Jamal Badawi was one of the leaders in charge of that. Jamal Badawi has also lobbied for Muslim judges not to apply Canadian law, but instead to apply Sharia law. He says that judges, Muslim judges, would do more harm to govern by Canadian law than they would do to Islamic law. He also likes to quote Ibn Taymiyyah. Now, this is a very old scholar, and he's known as a very, very radical scholar. He was the first person who made assassinating priests, and he did a lot of the intellectual groundwork around suicide bombing. So most Al-Qaeda, most suicide bombers, the people who they will quote as "this is noble" is the same guy who Badawi quotes often a lot in public life. So take that. Now, another thing is, just to get the Muslim Brotherhood background out of the way, he is on the European Council of Fatwa and Research with a man named Yusuf Qaradawi. And Yusuf Qaradawi is listed as the spiritual leader of the Muslim Brotherhood. And this is important, because you have to understand this. When they list him as a spiritual leader, which means he sort of dictates philosophical intellectual policy. So the Muslim Brotherhood likes to make this claim. We do not support any type of terrorism. But here's where Yusuf Qaradawi comes in. He makes it intellectually possible to support terrorism because Hamas is a listed terrorist organization and a part of the Muslim Brotherhood. They say they're the military branch of the Muslim Brotherhood, and the Muslim Brotherhood says they are Hamas. And what Qaradawi does is he's the one who made the ruling saying it's not considered murder or terrorism to kill Israelis because all Israelis, even a baby, are considered armed combatants, and it's a moral imperative to fight and kill the Jews. So by killing Jews, blowing up a school bus full of Israeli children, that's not terrorism, right? Because they are considered armed combatants in some global grand jihad warfare. So because it's spiritually ruled that killing Jews willy-nilly isn't terrorism, they can get up and say, yeah, we don't believe in terrorism, we're against terrorism. They just rule that terrorist acts aren't terrorism, and then they're against terrorism. Right? You see that little logic game there. So we have the Muslim Brotherhood. That's what they do, and we have Jamal Badawi's name as sort of one of the chief founders of this in Canada. So I'm going to come to the first organization, the National Council of Canadian Muslims, the NCCM, who I see as the most dangerous of all of them. Because the the NCCM, their goal is sort of to be the Islamophobia police. When the hijab hoax happened, when that little girl, got, attacked by a fictional Chinese man, I said, didn't make me so popular at family dinners, but I said, 50% chance it's fake, and if the NCCM is there at the press conference, 99% chance it's fake. Because this was at the time that the NCCM was trying to push January 29th being the day for awareness and action on Islamophobia. Right? They're trying to make an Islamophobia action day, right, in government, like a day. That was their big push. Then Mohammed Hashem, who we remember as the spin doctor behind the Danforth shooting, the friend of the family, he was heavily involved in pushing the hijab hoax narrative as well. And he's been listed as the driving force behind the NCCM. So their goal is to sort of, be this legitimate face of Islamophobia. Right? They're that legitimate branch. They'll get up and say, the leader, Ushingar, we have no ties to the Muslim Brotherhood. We have no ties to extremism. Who's Jamal Badawi? Oh, he's not part of the organization anymore. Interesting person who's on the board. Go to the website, check out the board. There is a Khadija Hajafi. She is currently on the board. And when she was on the editorial and advisory board of a magazine called Islamic Horizons, they printed an article about Hassan al-Banna and how he is a martyr for our time and a great intellectual hero and should be followed. Remember Hassan al-Banna? So you still have some people on the board with this ideology. Now there's another person on the board, Wahal Haradra. He's not there anymore. He's not listed on the website anymore, but he was on the board in 2012 when he was the director of the Muslim Association of Canada, the next organization we're going to get into, where they openly praise al-Banna and the Muslim Brotherhood. The Muslim Association of Canada is hilarious. This was great. But I just want to make a quick point here. Why am I doing this? Is this to slag Muslims, to destroy No. Right? There's a moral imperative here, because the first people to suffer from Islamist policies are the moderate Muslims themselves, okay? Now, I'm not saying, I don't believe for a second that every Muslim is trash. For years and years and years, Canada's been a place that has been able to willfully and gracefully integrate Muslim people or people from Islamic society, right? I know people who've run away from Egypt or Lebanon or Iran. There are tons of Iranians who are staunch supporters of Western liberalism, right? They came here because they're like, these people are crazy. I just want to go to a mosque, say my prayers, and go home. I don't want to be chopping off any clitorises or decapitating any apostates. That's insane. These people are crazy. They belong over there. I belong over here. But now we're bringing those crazies over here, and what we're doing is we're going to go over this, and I'm going to show you. The problem is we have the government, the Canadian government, willfully propping up the worst parts of the Islamic community as moderates, which means what else are you supposed to do but look at that, look at the connections of who Justin Trudeau and his ministers are shaking hands with, and just assume that all Muslims are like that. He never ever meets with any moderate, reform, liberal Muslims. Never. Only radicals is what Trudeau meets with. Only radicals. So I do this because I want to illustrate the point that, hey, it's not all of them, but these are the organizations, and they have legitimate power. And if we're ever going to get a good conversation, hey, remember when we had to talk to the Christian evangelical community and be like, hey, you know, biology and biology class, you can't teach evolution in public schools. We had a conversation and they didn't. But this happens, and the NCCM is in charge of making Islamic History Month in Ontario. We have Islamic History Month in Ontario. The curriculum is in part written by the National Council of Canadian Muslims, an organization tied to the Muslim Brotherhood. Well, we deny it. BS. So their job is the Islamophobia narrative. That's the job. Is just be in there. And one of the things they did do is there was a Reviving Islamic Spirit conference, and it was sponsored by the IRFAN, the Islamic for the Charity for the Afflicted and Needy. In 2012, there was a conference, Reviving Islamic Spirit. Justin Trudeau went to this conference, sponsored by IRFAN, and he talked about sharing their shared values for Canada. Here's where we're going to pause. IRFAN, we're not going to cover them because they're no longer in Canada. They're banned as a terrorist entity. In 2008 was the Holy Land Foundation trial. IRFAN was found guilty of terrorism financing in 2008. In 2012, they sponsored a conference. Justin Trudeau said, oh, a conference sponsored by terrorists? I'm going to talk about our shared values. A website, Point to Blast, who does a lot of work on counter-extremism, criticized Justin Trudeau for attending a conference sponsored by a terrorist group. Who called them Islamophobes in the press? The National Council of Canadian Muslims went after them for criticizing Justin Trudeau because this is promoting Islamophobia. You know what promotes Islamophobia? Conferences in the middle of the friggin' street sponsored by terrorists. Because Canadians go and say, why is this sponsored by terrorists? Why is the Prime Minister hopeful going to speak to those terrorists and talk about their shared values? You can't make this up. So that's the NCCM. That's their job, is to sort of run everything's Islamophobia. You know, we're working with our Jewish partners. We had a transgender rabbi with a congregation of no one to agree with us on Islamophobia and trans rights or whatever. But then we have the Muslim Association of Canada, an organization heavily linked to the National Council of Canadian Muslims. Jamal Badawi was listed in 2007 as the actual director of the Muslim Association of Canada. The man we just talked about, Walid Hayadra, in 2012 was on the board of the NCCM and was the director of the Muslim Association of Canada. Now, I did a lot of research for this episode. A lot. But when we got to the Muslim Association of Canada, I literally went to their website, clicked the first link, which is About Us, and on page 1 of About Us, you can show the text here. I'm just going to read you from the second paragraph here highlighted. This is the first link on their website. MAC's roots are deeply enshrined in the message of the Prophet Muhammad. Its modern roots can be traced to the vigorous intellectual reviver's effort that took hold in the Muslim society starting in the early 20th century. This revival aimed at reconciling faith with challenges of modernity and providing clear articulation of balance and moderation in understanding Islam. In the Arab world, this revival culminated in the writings of the late Imam Hassan al-Banna. It's on the website. Al-Banna's core message of constructive engagement in society. Yes, that's what we call taking over the West and instituting Islamic dominance. Constructive engagement. Focus personal and communal empowerment and organizational development and deep Islamic impact on the Muslim world. Not too long ago, I learned this website actually said Muslim Brotherhood. Right? Then they got caught, but a few years ago, this didn't say Hassan al-Banna. It said, we are inspired, not by Hassan al-Banna. They just said Muslim Brotherhood outright. Outright said Muslim Brotherhood. They are an open Muslim Brotherhood organization. In Senate testimony hearing by court experts, what's his face? he identified three organizations have been identified as Muslim Brotherhood front groups in the Canadian Senate. The NCCM, Muslim Association of Canada, and Islamic Relief Canada. Islamic Relief will be the cherry on top here. Hello, it's on the website. They are active in 11 different cities across Canada, have over 30 different mosques and schools. They teach the kids. They have mosques. Do you remember the mosque in Toronto? Masjid Toronto? Downtown Yonge and Dundas. So there's a new mosque that opens up Yonge and Dundas, prime property. Property value there is in the millions and millions. But then a mosque has the money to just open up there. How do they get that money? We have no idea. And then there's a prayer of a man saying, oh, death to the Jews, slay them one by one, spare not one of them, cleanse the Al-Aqsa Mosque from the filth of the Jews. Oh Allah, embarrass and subjugate the polytheists, the unbelievers, and the Hindus. Toronto Star runs a story. This man is so misunderstood. Enter Bernie Farber. I just don't understand. So their job is to just be openly, belligerently Islamists. They invite hate preachers all the time. They recently invited Tariq Ramadan, the grandson of Hassan al-Banna, and a noted Muslim Brotherhood, a noted listed hate speaker in many different places. He's not allowed in certain countries, but he is invited by the Muslim Association of Canada. He came in a couple years ago, told us about why it's good to kill Jews. He is openly in favor of Islamic world dominance. He is a friend of Jamal Badawi. They knew each other, served on councils together. Hello? Earth to logic, we still have this organization. This should be declared a terrorist entity and completely defunded. Now, I want to make an important distinction here. Not everyone in these organizations is like Muslim Brotherhood or trying to destroy Canada. Right? I'm sure there are some people, you know, you have an anti-Fatima, you know, who works with someone at the NCCM to help Muslim youth fight Islamophobia. Is she trying to destroy Canada? No, she's just up there. But the leaders of these organizations are bad people who we need to call out, right? And they're going to use the cover of, hey, we can prop up this one couple legitimate people in our thing. You know, is everyone at these schools, are they all terrible people? Is everyone sending the kids to school going to be radicalized? No. But we know what the overall structural system is. And if they're teaching the kids the teachings of Hassan al-Banna, and the teachings of Hassan al-Banna are Islamic world domination and the destruction of the immoral West, do you think they're going to want to institute Islamic domination through the destruction of the immoral West? Could that be a possible outcome? Right, to stop this. You get less people complaining about Islam if you just stop the crazy Muslims from making the normal Muslims crazier. It's easy, but we're so inept at this. So that's what I'm doing to the Muslim Association. It's on their website. They openly say, hey, hello, Muslim Brotherhood right here. Here's a list of all our different mosques. Here's all. You want to go to a hate speech? Oh, we got a hate speech for you. I think it's a ridiculous law, but they're the type of people who can be like, and we're going to kill the Jews and the Christians and the Hindus. Kill them, kill them. We need a genocide. Oh Allah, we need a genocide. Islamophobia is a big problem. That's their game. They're not even shy about it. All right. The Islamic Society of North America, the ISNA. ISNA. Now, you might remember ISNA from such radical Islamic scenes as getting a terrorism charge against them. Yes, they've had their charity status revoked for the third time this year for funding terrorism or willful negligence in their ability to send funds to terrorists. This is their third terrorism violation. How are they still around? I can once, oh, we accidentally funded terrorists. Maybe you can get me. Oh, it's a slip up. 2, this can't be a charity anymore. 3, suspension a little. No being a terrorist for 6 months. Thanks, Captain Justin Trudeau. And their funding is usually through, this is giving arms to Kashmiri militants. Mostly this is actually through Pakistani Jabhat out to here. They're like the East Asian version of the Muslim Brotherhood. Muslim Brotherhood is very Arab. But there are many, Jamaat al-Islami is like the Pakistani version of the Muslim Brotherhood. Very Islamist. And they sort of break it off and help create the Taliban. Ideologically very similar. Just, you know, there's like racial tension. It's like, you know, white crazies versus black crazies. You know, David Duke and Louis Farrakhan. They both have the exact same views on the world, but, you know, racism, so, you know, well, they do get along, but like, they just don't stand in the same building. What a shame. Now, the current director of ISNA, Catherine Bullock, progressive, a woman! Oh boy! She has some very interesting views. There's a video, and I watched the whole hour. She's talking to students, I believe, at Ryerson Law. It might be York, but I think it's Ryerson. About like Islamophobia and Islamic society and sort of de-radicalization from ISIS. And the whole thing of like, how do we deal with ISIS was of course all about how ISIS isn't really a problem and it's Islamophobia and it's just the media concoction. But she is on video saying, and she doubles down on this later in the video. Like, the reason I bring this up is because this is not being misinterpreted in the slightest. She actually thinks there is nothing radical about wanting Sharia law and a caliphate. There's nothing radical. They're like, the Canadian government says it's radical to want Sharia law. Then she actually goes back and reiterates this point and I'm like, okay, maybe she just means like, I can understand the argument of, you know, not every Muslim is radical if they just say, hey, I want some aspects of Sharia, you know, I think people should wash their feet and I think that's good. But she actually then states orthodox Sharia law, stoning adulteress, chopping off the heads of the apostates, right? Women are literally half of men. They can inherit half of what a man does. It takes 2 witnesses to convict someone in court. 4 if they're women because, you know, bitches be crazy. Prophet Muhammad, one of his new singles. She literally said there was nothing radical about wanting a caliphate. By the way, that's what ISIS is. It is a state governed by Sharia law and orthodox Sharia law, which is chop off the hands if you steal something, chop off your head if you leave the Islam, stone people to death if they commit adultery. Nothing radical in that. Nothing radical with wanting to overthrow Canadian society and replace it with ISIS. Nothing radical about that to her. It's a really funny video. I suggest you watch it. She then says the reason ISIS is so big is because there's like violence in movies like The Avengers. She said like, oh, we should do a study on how many times people who went to go fight for ISIS like watch The Avengers. It's pretty nuts. It's pretty nuts. She's the head of this group. Now we have the Islamic Circle of North America, ISNA, ICNA. They are considered the crazy version of the ISNA. By the ISNA, which means we're in for a fun time here. On the ICNA's website, what do you think they promote? Child marriage? You got it. Sex slavery? Not just once, not twice, not 3 times, not 4, not 5, 6 different times. They make it explicitly clear that they are pro-sexual slavery. Let's get some stuff down here. Okay. In one of the documents they refer to as good reading, the ICNA, guys, you want some good reading on sex slaves? All right, here's what everyone should know about sexual slavery in Canada. Islam allows a man to have intercourse with his slave woman whether he has a wife or wives or he is not married. A slave woman with whom a man has intercourse is known as a sayrida, concubine from the word sayir, which means marriage. Fascinating. This is indicated by Quran and Sunnah and was done by the prophets. Our prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, also did that, as did the Sababa, the righteous and the scholars. All the righteous had sex slaves. What you talking about? The scholars are unanimously agreed that on that, and it is not permissible to regard this as haram or to forbid it. Whoever regards this as haram is a sinner who is going against the consensus of the scholars. That's right. If you're a scholar and you say, guys, no sex slavery, haram, you are a sinner. Saying sex slavery is bad is a sin, according to these whack jobs. The wife has no right to object to her husband owning female slaves or to his having intercourse with them. Did this make it into the Gillette ad? I can't remember. Can someone tell me, was that line in the Gillette ad? You can't object to your husband taking sex slaves? Paige and Gillette, hello. Gillette, what's your view on Islamic sex slavery? Hello? Hello? They didn't answer. Islamic sex slavery, the best a man can get. Gillette. Gillette, our new slogan, sexual slavery for all. And again, I'm gonna lazy out on the crazy part of this because, okay, Wikipedia is not trustworthy on stuff of Islamic means. They are way far to the left. If you want to know what I mean, look up Omar Carter's father and how Wikipedia defines him as a philanthropist. He was a chief al-Qaeda financier. Like the Qardars were family friends with Osama bin Laden, who was at his sister's wedding. Charitable ad. This is the controversy section on Wikipedia. This is just how, like, yeah, they're nuts. They are nuts. But they have conferences all the time. In July 2002, Anwar al-Awlaki, believed to be a senior talent recruiter and motivator for al-Qaeda, who had contact with 3 of the 9/11 hijackers, the Fort Hood shooter, and the Christmas Day bombing suspect, joined a joint ICNA-MAS convention in Baltimore with Siraj Wahhaj. Oh, we're going to get to Siraj Wahhaj in a little bit next. Now, Anwar al-Awlaki, if you don't remember, Muslim Brotherhood disciple, he was an American, but the chief recruiter for al-Qaeda. Open al-Qaeda fan. Remember, al-Qaeda bombed the 2 towers in 2001. In 2002, the chief recruiter for al-Qaeda went to an ICNA conference with Siraj Wahhaj, who we're going to get into next, after we finish off the ICNA. The ICNA says that until 2007, many American Muslims enthusiastically listened to lectures by al-Awlaki, the chief al-Qaeda recruiter. Also said at the time that al-Awlaki was level-headed. Yes, Anwar al-Awlaki is a level-headed man, according to the ICNA, who is still operating in Canada. They don't have charitable status, thank God, but this is still a real group that helps sponsor conferences that people go to. We may revive the Islamic spirit with Anwar al-Awlaki, pew pew, suicide bombings or lots of suicide bombings. What are we doing this year? After evidence was brought against al-Awlaki in 2010, remember, in 2001, he was like, Al-Qaeda is great! Al-Qaeda is great for doing the Twin Towers! Join Al-Qaeda! Join Al-Qaeda! And then in 2010, it was proved in court that yes, okay, this American is actually a terrorist. The court went in. Then in 2010, ICNA Shura Council strongly denounced al-Awlaki and says his views and actions are calls of hate. Oh, no, bad. He was fantastic those first 9 years when he was like, Al-Qaeda is great. Guys, yo, dudes, there's this thing called Al-Qaeda, and they just kill people, and you take a plane and you just like fly it into a building and go kaboom! And then you like take a girls' school and you go bam, 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 die! And it's great, you should do it. And the ICNA was like, this is fantastic, level-headed advice. Everyone should go kaboom. Also, sex slaves good. And then when the court's like, yeah, that's terrorism, we're like, oh, no, yeah, we disagree. Disagree. A little bit. And according to Yehud Baratsky, an expert on terrorism in the American Jewish Committee, the Islamic Circle of North America is composed of members of Jamaat al-Islami, a Pakistani Islamist radical organization similar to the Muslim Brotherhood that helped establish the Taliban. The ADL has hit them because they've invited multiple hate speakers over the years that have called for the genocide of Jews and the annihilation of Israel. Money should know what's new. It's literally on their Wikipedia page. And Justin Trudeau will go to these conferences and talk about their shared values of Anwar al-Awlaki. So I remember to promise you the Siraj Wahhaj. He is a big figure in the ISNA. He also helped split the CNA. Now, Siraj Wahhaj is another unindicted co-conspirator, but not from the Holy Land Foundation trial, which he was sort of involved in, but from the World Trade Center bombing, the 1990s one. So the Blind Sheikh was the guy convicted of it. Siraj Wahhaj was one of his disciples, and he was an unindicted co-conspirator in the bombing of the World Trade Center. You're thinking, Siraj Wahhaj, where have I heard that name? Now, the Siraj Wahhaj we're talking about right now is Linda Sarsour's favorite man in the room. At an ISNA conference, I think last year, she called for Muslim Americans to not integrate into society, wage jihad against the White House, and then singled out Siraj Wahhaj as her mentor and favorite person in the room. The GOAT. I shouldn't say that, that's Tamika Mallory and Louis Farrakhan. But Siraj Wahhaj was her favorite person. This guy is a known radical who was an unindicted co-conspirator in a terrorism attack. And he's your mentor, Linda. And you're thinking, no, that's not where I know the name Siraj Wahhaj. See, you're actually thinking of Siraj Wahhaj, not Siraj Wahhaj here. Siraj Wahhaj, Crazy McPants, has a son named Siraj Wahhaj. And where does that name little tickle you in the back of your head? Remember this year, actually now last year, 2018, when there was that terrorist training camp in New Mexico where they found a dead kid? Yeah, that dead kid was the son of Siraj Wahhaj. He kidnapped that kid and a bunch of other kids and had a training camp teaching kids about Sharia law and how Sharia law is great. And what you do is you take your guns and you go into school and you go bam, 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 die kafirs for Islam. That's Sir Haj Wahaj. That's his son. Oh, lovely people. Linda Sarsour's favorite men in the room. Her mentors. And he's the leader of the Women's March. And this man was an unindicted co-conspirator in a bombing of the World Trade Center. And his son held a jihadi terrorist training camp in New Mexico. A kid died, and we're all just going to forget about that one. Just don't talk. Shh. We're not going to talk about that. Don't we just love progressivism? All right, now let's get to the final group before we get into our honorable mentions. The last group we're going to cover in depth. Oh, we're past 7, but it doesn't care. We're going overtime. We're going overtime. No TOT. Let's do it. Islamic Relief Canada. Let's show the picture. Here's a sponsor of Islamic Relief Canada. Who's that? Is that Sir Haj Wahaj? No, that's Fidel Castro. Just joking, it's Justin Castro. That is the Prime Minister of our country who goes to Islamic Relief Canada events and helps them out. Islamic Relief also comes and says prayers in Toronto City Council, even though it's illegal. You have separation of church and state. Islamic Relief Canada. Now, if we remember, Tom Quiggin, a court-certified expert on jihadist extremism, launched a report basically alleging that major members of the Canadian government were willfully funding terrorism through Islamic Relief. I said they were noted as a Muslim Brotherhood front group in Canada. But let's go over this. In order to use the Islamic Relief logo, which they're using in that picture, in order to use that logo, you have to be a member of Islamic Relief Worldwide. In order to be a part of Islamic Relief Worldwide, you have to give them money, right? It's a shared profit system. Islamic Relief Worldwide is a listed terrorist organization in the United Arab Emirates. Oh, so is the NCCM, by the way. So is CARE. The NCCM, terrorist organization in the United Arab Emirates. Islamophobes. Clearly an Islamophobic country with their Islamophobic little hats. So here's their sponsor in Canada, Islamic Relief Canada, brought to you by Captain Peoplekind. Let's go into it. So the Israeli government has shown documents that Islamic Relief Worldwide provides funds to Hamas, which is a terrorist organization. And these reports have been corroborated by the UAE, which also lists them as a terrorist organization. The UAE and Israel agree on something and have agreed on it for a while. Take notice, they don't usually agree on much. The United States, Russia, and China will not affiliate with Islamic Relief due to terrorism concerns. The Muslim majority country of Bangladesh, a country where if you criticize Islam on a blog, they will swarm you and cut your head off with a machete, and the government says, yeah, it's cool. That same government will not take money from Islamic Relief Worldwide to help them out with the Rohingya refugee crisis because of terrorism concerns. Let's get that straight. Bangladesh, a Muslim-majority country who has its own problem with extremism right now, says, these mofos are too crazy for us. We won't even take free money from them because of terrorism concerns. And our Prime Minister sponsors their events. HSBC Bank UK will not do dealings with Islamic Relief Worldwide because of terrorism funding concerns. Here's a fun one. UBS Bank in Switzerland will not will not work with Islamic Relief Worldwide because of terrorism funding concerns. Do you realize how shady an organization you have to be for the Swiss bank to say no to your money? Do you remember when the Nazis were like, hi, we have all these gold teeth and locks of hair from children. They totally came from legitimate means. Can you store them for us for money? And they're like, yeah, nothing wrong with that. Nothing shady about a bunch of bands of wedding rings and gold teeth. Where do you get those? Probably the Tooth Fairy. Next. Oh, you just committed a genocide in Rwanda and need to store your funds here? Okay. Islamic Relief Worldwide. Whoa. We ain't dealing with that. Our Prime Minister sponsored these fools. They were removed from Canadian Post Canada's charity list, UK Children's Charity Aid Fund. A lot of different charities have removed them from recommended lists due to fears of terrorism funding. They again have been identified as a Muslim Brotherhood front group in Canada in Senate testimony hearing. Yet when the M103 motion came about and we needed to give money, there was $23 million assigned to fight Islamophobia. Who are you going to call? Islamic Relief Canada. Yes, they got most of that $23 million from our Liberal government. Oh boy. Oh boy. No better way to fight Islamophobia and racism than give the money to an organization that funds terrorism that wants to kill all the Jews. Lovely. lovely people we have here. So that's the main players on the list. I'm going to give you guys an honorable mentions, and the reason I'm only honorably mentioning these people is, again, these ones are too hard to parse out for someone at my level. If you want to learn more about organizations like this and actually what they say, I suggest the Quiggin Report. Tom Quiggin does a fantastic podcast. He has decades of experience in this. So honorable mention to the Canadian Council of Imams, who has some crazies there. And, you know, sometimes they say something that's not radical, and they have, you know, just like, you know, sex slaves. And you're like, what? Then there's the Muslim Students Association, which is a known Muslim Brotherhood front group. The Muslim Students Association, fun fact about this, Iqra Khalid claims to have written the constitution of the Muslim Students Association in York, and in that constitution it describes itself as a hardline Salafist organization. That is like Wahhabis, like the Salafists are the traditional, like they're the ones who are like, anyone who isn't my type of Islam isn't a Muslim, and we're going to mess you up. So Iqra Khalid claims to have written the constitution, which in itself says it's a Salafist organization with all these shady connections. And Iqra Khalid's like, I did that. Let's take a word for it. So those are our honorable mentions.